Hi, welcome you all to the second part of my lecture series on the 10th chapter of Cbse Class 10th Physics, that is Light, Reflection and Refraction. In this video, we are going to talk about the following topics one by one. First, we will go through sources of light and try to classify these sources into two categories, that are luminous and non-luminous sources. Then we will talk about the reflection and laws of reflection. Thereafter, we will talk about plane mirrors and we will discuss the characteristics of the image formed by a plane mirror. Finally, we will discuss about regular and diffused reflection. So this is Anand. You are watching the official YouTube channel of Newton Gate Academy. Let's start. Let's start this video with the first topic, that is sources of light. The definition says a body which emits light is called a source of light. We can classify a source of light into two broad categories, that are luminous sources and non-luminous sources. Let's start with luminous sources. Any object which by itself emits light is known as a luminous source. That means अगर किसी ऑब्जेक्ट का अपना खुद का लाइट है जो कि वो emit कर रहा है, we can call it as a luminous source, right? For example, sun, stars, lamps, candles, lanterns, etc. Obviously, we can further classify luminous sources into natural luminous sources and artificial luminous sources based on the fact that whether they are natural or artificial ones. Sun and stars, since they are natural, so we call them as natural luminous sources, while candles, lamps, etc. Since they are artificial ones, they are produced by humans, we classify them under artificial luminous sources. Similarly, non-luminous sources are those objects which do not emit light but become visible only when light from a luminous object falls on them. That means non-luminous sources does not have the light of their own. A non-luminous source does not have light of their own. What they do is just reflecting the light that is being incident on their surface. Obviously, the light that is being incident on the surface of a non-luminous source of light is produced by some luminous source, right? Like this sun is a non-luminous source of light because it doesn't have its own light. What it is doing is just reflecting the light produced by the sun, right? The sun is producing light and that light is being incident on the surface of the moon, and what it is doing, it is just reflecting that incident light, and that is the reason why the moon becomes visible to us. Why the moon is visible to us. This is the same reason why the things around us are visible to us, like the furniture, like tables, like chair, like fan, like the walls of your room, ceiling, roof, etc. All these things are non-luminous sources of light. They do not have their own light. What they do is just reflecting the light that is being incident on their surface, and that is the reason why they become visible to us. Fine? Now let us talk about our second topic, that is reflection of light. We all have been studying it since our childhood that there are two laws of reflection. The first one is the angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of reflection whenever there is a reflection taking place, obviously, right? The second law of reflection says the incident ray, the normal ray to the surface at the point of incidence, and the reflected ray all lie in the same plane. These two laws we have been studying since our childhood. Okay, so I hope that you know, since we have already discussed about it in our previous chapter, you must be knowing that the incoming light ray, that means the light ray which is falling on the surface of an object, is known as the incident ray, and the light ray after bouncing back is known as reflected ray. Okay, this is the point of incidence because light rays is striking this surface at this point, so this is the point of incidence, and we draw a normal at this point of incidence. This is known as normal, obviously. The angle of incidence is, let me just erase everything. Yes, the angle of incidence is the angle made by this incident ray with this normal. So this is the angle of incidence. We usually represent it with the letter I, and the angle of reflection is the angle made by the reflected ray with the normal. So this is the angle of refraction. So this is usually denoted by R. Okay. So the first law is very obvious that I is always equal to R. Whenever there is a reflection there taking place, I repeat, whenever there is a reflection taking place, I will always be equal to R. That means angle of incidence will always be equal to angle of reflection. No matter whether the reflecting surface is rough or smooth, no matter whether the reflection is a diffuse reflection or a specular reflection, about which we will talk about in the next slide. Okay, no matter what kind of reflecting surface it is, as long as it is reflection, it has to obey the laws of reflection. Okay, laws of reflection obey होना ही होना है अगर reflection हो रहा है, फर्क नहीं पड़ता, it doesn't matter smooth surface है या rough surface है, it doesn't matter, फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि specular reflection है या diffuse reflection है, laws of reflection will always be followed. Okay, so the second law is that sometimes confuses a few people, a few students. The incident ray, the normal to the surface at the point of incidence, and the reflected ray all lie in the same plane. So what does it mean? Here this is the incident ray, this is the reflected ray, and this is the normal at the surface. So can you imagine there is a plane in which all these three things are lying? This is what the second law of reflection says. कि जब भी रिफ्लेक्शन हो रहा है एक प्लेन तो होगा जिसमें कि ये तीनों ही चीजें आएंगी, इंसिडेंट रे भी, रिफ्लेक्टेड रे भी और नॉर्मल भी, नॉर्मल टू द एट द पॉइंट ऑफ इंसिडेंस obviously. In this slide we will talk about the formation of image by a plane mirror. What do you understand by a plane mirror? Obviously a mirror, the reflecting surface of which is a plane, we call it a plane mirror. यानी अगर किसी मिरर का रिफ्लेक्टिंग सरफेस प्लेन है, फ्लैट है, तो हम उसे प्लेन मिरर कहेंगे, right? So there are certain characteristics of plane mirrors about which we are going to learn in this slide. So what are the various characteristics of a plane mirror? See, the first characteristic is image formed by a plane mirror is always virtual and erect. देखो अभी virtual and erect को लेकर के दिमाग नहीं खराब करना, okay? Virtual images are always erect. At this stage of our discussion, just know that virtual images are always erect. जो images virtual होते हैं वो हमेशा सीधे होते हैं, they are always erect. Okay, at this stage this information is sufficient for you, because for real image, for virtual image we will have dedicated videos in the future. In this, for the same chapter, obviously in different parts of this chapter we will deal with virtual images and real images in more detail. Okay, तो एक plane mirror, obviously एक ऐसा mirror जिसका reflecting surface plane है, it always forms a virtual and erect mirror. It always forms a virtual and erect image. Okay, you can see here as well. Here you can see a baby, and his virtual and erect image is being formed by this mirror, right? अब ये image virtual क्यों है, इस पर फिलहाल दिमाग नहीं लगाना, उसके बारे में हम future videos में डिस्कस करेंगे, right? Coming to the next point, coming to the next characteristic of a plane mirror, the size of the image is always equal to that of the object. You can see here as well. The size of this baby is equal to the size of the image, right? The third point is the image formed is as far behind the mirror as the object is in front of it. That means suppose that यहाँ पर एक plane mirror है. Let's suppose there is a plane mirror here. तुम अगर यहाँ खड़े हो, if you are standing here, then let's say this distance is 2 meters, then your image will be formed behind the mirror at a distance of 2 meters. That means, what it means? The image formed is as far behind the mirror as the object is in front of it. That means the distance of the image from the mirror will be equal to the distance of the object from the mirror. अगर तुम दूर जाओगे मिरर से तो तुम्हारा इमेज भी दूर जाएगा मिरर से, because the image has to be at the same distance from the mirror as the object is from the mirror. Okay, object distance is equal to image distance from the, obviously from the plane mirror. Object distance is equal to image distance from the plane mirror. The next point is the image is laterally inverted. Now what does this lateral inversion mean? See, Inversion can be of two types. First is vertical inversion. That means सर पैर बन गया और पैर सर बन गया. That is what we call vertical inversion. यानी कि image बिल्कुल उल्टा हो गया. Image upside down हो गया. That is called vertical inversion. Then there is another term that we call lateral inversion. Lateral inversion means the right of the object becomes left of the image and the left of the object becomes right of the image. That means object का left image का right हो गया, object का right image का left हो गया. Now if this baby raises his left hand up, the image will raise his right hand up, right? And if this baby raises his right hand up, the image will raise his left hand up. That means the left of the baby is right of the image and the right of the baby is left of the image. This is what lateral inversion means. Based on the reflecting surface, reflection can be of two types. First is regular reflection, which is also known as secular reflection, and irregular reflection, which is also known as diffuse reflection. Can you tell me the difference between regular reflection and diffuse reflection? Yes. When a parallel beam of light is incident on a plain, highly polished surface, the type of reflection that takes place is known as regular reflection. So we can say that regular reflection takes place through perfectly flat surface or perfectly smooth surface. In the case of regular reflection, for a parallel beam of incident light, the reflected light will also be parallel. That means here you can say the rays are parallel to each other before reflection. That means the incident rays are parallel to each other and the reflected rays are parallel to each other as well, because this is the case of a regular reflection where the reflecting surface is perfectly plane. You can relate a plain, highly polished surface with the reflecting surface of a mirror. A very important characteristic of regular reflection is that when regular reflection takes place, the image is formed. That means we can see images when regular reflection takes place. Now let's talk about irregular reflection. Irregular reflection takes place when the reflecting surface is not smooth, or we can say when the reflecting surface is rough. The type of reflection that takes place is irregular reflection. When a parallel beam of light is incident on a rough surface or irregular surface, the rays get reflected in all directions and the reflected light spreads over a wide area. So in irregular reflection, what happens? The reflecting surface is not smooth, is not a perfectly plane surface. That is why the reflected rays are reflected in all directions, just like this. So here you can see that the incident rays are parallel to each other, but the reflected rays are not parallel to each other because an irregular reflection is taking place here. It should be noted that in the case of an irregular reflection or diffuse reflection, no image is formed, or if the image is being formed, it is blurred. Okay? So irregular reflection occurs from rough surfaces like wood, table, door, book, etc. And due to irregular reflection, things become visible to us. So a very important characteristic of regular reflection is that an image is formed and is seen in the case of a regular reflection, while a blurry image or no image is formed in the case of an irregular reflection. Let's have a look on this image. Here the water surface is perfectly smooth because the water is not in a disturbed state. For this reason, the reflection taking place here is regular reflection. While in this case, the surface of the water is disturbed. For this reason, it is not perfectly smooth and the reflection taking place here is diffuse reflection. For this reason, the image being formed here is blurry. So this was all in this video. In the next one, we will talk about more topics from this chapter. Till then, bye bye.